Hello, writers, and welcome to session 4 of the Write That Book Now writing course. And this is about clarity of place and time, particularly of place. So I don't know if you've ever read a book. I'm sure you have. I've read quite a few where somebody has been doing something, say, in the present moment. So Trevor's walking along the street in 2024. It's Brisbane, wherever it is, and something kind of catches his eye or his ear. He hears a piece of music or he sees something and it just takes him back to another time. And so here he is walking along the street today here, and we've got that as we're reading. And suddenly Trevor's walking across the Tower Bridge, and the muddy water is going underneath, and there's Big Ben over there, and there's the what do they call it? That big the gherkin, as they call the telecom building. And suddenly it's like, while we're reading, we suddenly, it's like, how, what's going on here? I thought we were in Brisbane today, and now suddenly I've gone somewhere else. And if we know London, as I do, we realise that the muddy brown water is not the Brisbane River, which is muddy and brown, but it's the Thames. And suddenly it might take a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs for us to go, hang on, how did we go from there to here? And it's confusing. And as a reader who wants to understand the story and get it, so we don't want to miss out on everything that's going on and the action, we need to know what's happening. I might have to go back and read it again, because the shift from now in Brisbane to maybe 30 years later in London, when this trigger in Brisbane sent us back, how did that transition happen? And if it's not clear, it's really confusing. It can be really annoying, and it can put people off reading. If we have one of those in a book, it's okay. We shouldn't have any. And so I might just go, it's a bit silly, I'll carry on. But if I have more than one, I'm going to probably put the book down. No more. Don't want to read it. And I probably won't go back to that same author. And I know it sounds like a tiny detail, this lack of detail of transference from one time to another, from one place to another, but it's vitally important. And remember that your book is one of billions out there on the marketplace. And people get them from libraries, they buy them from bookstores, they buy from charity auctions, they get free ones from those community libraries where people do the swappy things. Books are easily available, and there's lots of them around. And so when you've got that kind of market, it's very easy for people to go, I'm done with that. It doesn't work for me. I've read 3 pages and now go away. I'll find another one, because it's easy to get another book. So to keep our readers engaged and reading the next paragraph, the next chapter, the next whatever, we need to make it easy for them so they're not confused and they don't go, what's happening here? How did this happen? It has to be clear. And I know there's all sorts of poetic ways of doing it, but the simplest way is just to be absolutely clear. So he smelt this, I don't know, maybe it was a perfume of somebody walking by, and it reminded him of Marjorie back in London in 1938. No, is someone going to be that old? I don't know. Some other time, in some other place. So he mentioned that the nowadays this place trigger, whatever that trigger was, and then the trigger that where it took us to Paris, I don't know, the Sahara, wherever it took us to, and when it took us to. So we can mention a year, we can mention an age, give some specific numbers, if you like, or some specific labels, place names, Sahara, Gabon, we're in Ghana, or wherever he is or she is. So that's a very It's a very simple thing to do, to mark the transition very clearly. And it doesn't take away from the story. It might only be 2 or 3 words that will make it absolutely clear about what happened. You heard some music and it took him back to the 1960s when he was rocking and a rolling in New York or whatever he was doing. So we've got the 1960s. So we've got the music, and then it took him back to the 1960s, and it took him back to New York. So we've got a time and a place and the stimulus that took him there, and saying that it took him there. So those kind of 4 things. We need time, place, and first of all the stimulus, and then kind of what happened. So that the memory took him back. It was a time of an amazing job that he used to have somewhere. He was a pilot, and now he's disabled. And so he remembered flying the Boeing 747 or whatever it was. Whatever. So there's 4 things: the stimulus, what happened, it took him back, where to, and when. And I know that sounds so obvious, but it's not obvious to an awful lot of writers that I've tried to read their books and put them down. It's a really silly, simple thing. So that's part of the clarity thing. The other thing is, and this is one of my least capable things, shall I say. So in terms of writing, probably my superpowers, if you like, are mainly dialogue. I do that really easily and well, and that's not my assessment. And I'm pretty good at with action, moving stuff, going all over the place, and it being good. So I do that. I find it really hard to do description, to put in this description of the place, description of people, description of, I don't know, birds, sounds, and all of that stuff. And so I tend to write the action and the dialogue because that comes very naturally for me. And then I've got to go back because people often say it's a wonderful bit of dialogue and it was hilarious, or it was really stirring, and the action, it was amazing, it got me really hooked in, but I couldn't quite figure out where it was. Was it on top of the mountain, or was it down in the valley? Was it by the description, Philip, come on, do description. So I've really got to be present to description, which is kind of why I'm talking about this, because I'm talking to me and possibly a few others. So description you might be very good at description, and that's fine. So it's just important that we make, I don't like journey, everyone talks about journeys, but anyway, we took the reader's journey. Let's make it easy. If he was up a hill, we say he's up the top of a hill and he can see the sea. Oh no, he can't see the sea. He's in the middle of the country, so he can't see any sea. He sees the desert before him, or he sees the city before him. So that place is on the hill, and there's a city, or there's a desert, or there's a sea, wherever it gives. And that's really simple, just a few words. And it puts the reader in the book, and it puts the reader in the story. Because otherwise, if the reader's sitting outside the story and going, is he crossing a bridge, or is he just wading through the river? I can't work this out. If it's not clear how he crossed the river, did he go over on a punt? Did he jump over? Is it too wide? Maybe it's a mile wide, the Amazon. So he has to, I don't know, row across, or motorboat across, or hire a boat, whatever. So when we've got movement, when we've got things happening, as I tend to be quite good at, I tend to forget that, because I'm there. I know where I am. In my mind, I'm in this place. Whether I'm skiing down Mount Ruapehu in New Zealand, or whether I'm, I don't know, jet boating up the Shotover River, I've been to those places. I've written about the places that I've been to. So I'm in it. I have no problem picturing it. But my reader does, because they've never done it, probably. I need to put them in the picture. And so one thing we can do is pretend that we are radio announcers, and that every word is vital, because the radio announcer, all they have is words. And it's the same as writers. So I'm comparing radio announcers to TV announcers, shall we say, presenters. And I noticed that a lot of TV presenters nowadays, particularly, dispense with description. And they're walking around this amazing place and they say, this is really amazing, it's incredible, it's beautiful, it's lovely, it's inspiring. But that doesn't mean anything to me. What does inspiring mean to me? I have to describe in a book why it's inspiring. I have to describe in a book why it feels uplifting, why walking along the cliff of these wild waves below, I have to describe in the book why that feels exhilarating. I don't just use the word exhilarating. In fact, I shouldn't even use the word exhilarating. I should use enough description that the reader goes, wow, that's really exhilarating. The reader should use those words, not the writer. So think about taking out all of those words like exciting and exhilarating and terrible and awful and smelly. What is the smell? How do you describe? Smells are difficult. The most difficult thing, because we have less word for smells. But if we can take out things like smelly and try and use another, probably a symbol, if you like, or an allegory as to why it, and then when the reader's reading it, they'll go, oh, that must have been the smelly. So we don't tell them it's smelly. We describe it in such a way that the reader puts that word smelly in, or the reader puts the word, what I used before, exhilarating, fun. What makes it fun? Going down on a bobsleigh or doing something, describing the trip at 120 kilometers an hour on a bobsleigh, which I've done. And yes, it scared the heck out of me. But scaring the heck out of me makes no impression on your mind, on your sense of what it was. So I had to describe it. It was like having Coke bottles on my eyes. I couldn't see. It was blurry. And everything was just going past so fast, and it was so cold. But I couldn't move a muscle. I wasn't allowed to move anything. I tried moving the little finger, and suddenly it started tipping over. And there down below was this cliff that just went hundreds of meters down, black, shiny rocks. So I'm just playing with all sorts of places and experiences and times where we can fall into the trap of being lazy. I'm calling it lazy because that's what I am. I like getting on with the action. I like getting on with dialogue. And I have to stop and go, Philip. These people haven't been here. And so all of those words that the TV presenters use, which, they could use some actual description because they are there. They're there surfing, or they're there in the shopping mall, or wherever they're reporting. They could use more descriptive words. And if they were to pretend that they were a radio announcer, not a television announcer, then that would raise the stakes, because we would be in the story much more. So I'm challenging you to write an approximately 500-word story about a place or an event, and try not to use those kind of descriptive words in the sense of exciting, boring, uplifting, breathtaking, smelly. What other words are there? All of those words, and describe it in ways that seem mundane while we're describing it, but it will take the reader right there. So I've done two things. I've done my little exercise. So my first one that I did, I have the other little, not superpower, but I do like observing human beings. And I can't help, well, I can, but I fall into very easily whatever I'm talking about, whether it's a thriller or whether it's whatever, I can still put in some sort of social comment. I find myself doing that very easily. It's just I just love observing people and being a counsellor and a coach. Kind of, it's what I kind of do. So what I've done is I've written 2 stories about the same event, and the first one is my story, and the second one is so my partner's much more, let's say, right brain, logical person. So she went through and edited it and got me to write less poetically, if you like, less socially, whatever, and just write facts. There's not a lot of difference between these 2 pieces. They're about the same thing. There's a lot of similarities. But I'd like you just to close your eyes if you're watching this or if you're listening to it. See which one you're more in as a reader. Which one are you more? So it's a story of, it's what I do 2 days a week. On from work, I cycle for an hour into Surfers. And it's a lovely, lovely trip. See, I just did it. It's a lovely trip. That means nothing to nobody. And is a variety of, I was going to say venues, there's a variety of environments that I go through. And I use those environments to do my little social thing, my social comment. So I'm just be interested for you to observe the subtle differences between these 2 pieces of writing, and then you can do yours and send that in to me. I'm sure you will. So I'm going to read the first one, which is the one I wrote, and then I will read the second one, which was my partner's one, and I've forgotten which one, so that's the one. So this is cycling to work. The boom gate goes up and down as I cycle out of the confines of the over-50s complex, and before me is the openness of parkland. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. This is the one I first wrote. The boom gate goes up and down as I cycle out of the confines of the over-50s complex, and before me is the openness of nature. The serpentine cycle track ahead wends its way through mower-loved grassland and between trees verdant with birds of every screech and squawk imaginable. Magpies, cockatoos, parrots, lorikeets, kookaburras, while silent ibises strut about like officious rubbish collectors. To my left is the tidal lake with the shy rising sun pouring golden syrup across the rippling waters. I'll say hello to Pete with his poodle, Jack with his, yes, Jack Russell, Marjorie with her clacking walking stick, and other regulars in this early morning sunshine. Some strangers look startled as I greet them, speeding by, and I know in a few days they'll initiate the greeting and raise their eyes above the ground. Connecting with transient others is a learning curve. Black is still the new black in town, but here is every other bright colour imaginable. Is it that they've retired? Are they retired and free? That they live close to nature, or some other reason? Not a black garment in sight to be seen, and their smiles and banter are as vibrant as their attire. There's 2 men in waist-high water casting their nets, and then an old chap sitting on the lake edge with his line out and his pug dog snoozing wheezily beside him. 300 yards later, two teenagers have clambered over the security gate and are fishing off the private wharf. I yell g'day, give them the thumbs up, and they laugh back. A shared celebration of victory for harmless anarchy. After 5 minutes of weaving around curves and dodging walkers deaf to my bell, I break out into a cul-de-sac as trees give way to houses on my right, the inflowing lake my constant companion on my left. Then through another, shorter forest ride. I appreciate that every tree and bird call is different as I zoom out onto another street. Square is the shape of houses and the colours are limited to white, beige and grey. No one would dare paint their abode in green, red, green or blue. Like the black clothes in town and in every cafe, we don't want to stray from the unspoken rule about being different, like everyone else. Mind you, when I get to work, I will change out of my green and white lycra and into my slacks and business shirt. We're all captives of the rules of engagement somehow, aren't we? So half an hour along the black and white road, watching every black and white car, lest they're not watching me, I come to the big blue, the Labrador beach with the screech of seagulls and the smell of brine. This is another concrete path for bicycles, prams, wheelchairs, walkers, runners and dogs, and two chaps cycling along with a budgie on each of their shoulders. As I cycle closer to surfer's paradise, the colours, body shapes and languages increase in variety. The whole planet sampled in this holiday microcosm. The other preponderance I notice is as the relentless waves play their calming music beyond the smooth sand, our bodies puffed up with exercise and steroids as they stiffly strut their tan skins before us. Pete, Jack and Marjorie think these people are funny, but they regard themselves with grave seriousness. And I wonder, does the water's inability to judge encourage people's creativity and variety? Does nature allow us to be our unabashed selves in ways we can't do for ourselves? There's no answer, I know, but I savour the question over the cappuccino I habitually enjoy. So that was the initial one. And the other one was, don't do that. I'll start again. And this is the less poetic, a little more detail. The boom gate goes up and down as I cycle out of the confines of the over-50s complex, and before me is the openness of parkland. The concrete serpentine track ahead wends its way through manicured grassland and between trees full of birds of every sound imaginable. Twittering sparrows, cawing magpies, hilariously cackling cockatoos, quibbling lorikeets, while silent ibises strut about like officious rubbish collectors. To my left is a tidal lake, with the rising sun pouring golden syrup across the rippling waters. I'll say hello to Pete with his poodle, walking towards me. Jack with his Jack Russell not far behind. Marjorie, a stout old lady with her clacking walking stick, and other regulars in this early morning sunshine. As I cycle by, strangers look startled as I greet them, and I know in a few days they'll initiate the greeting and raise their eyes above the ground. Connecting with transient others is a learning curve. Black is still the new black in town, but here is every other bright colour imaginable. Is it that they're retired and free, that they live close to nature, or some other reason? Not a black garment to be seen, and their smiles and banter are as vibrant as their attire. There's two men in waist-high water casting their nets, and then an old chap sitting on the lake edge with his line out and pug dog snoozing wheezily beside him. 300 yards later, two teenagers have clambered over the 2-metre security gate and are fishing off the largely signed private wharf. I yell g'day, give them the thumbs up, and they laugh back, a shared celebration of victory for harmless anarchy. After 5 minutes of weaving around curves and dodging walkers deaf to my bell, I break out into the cul-de-sac as trees give way to houses on my right, the in-flying lake my constant companion on my left. Then another, shorter forest ride through the spongy-barked, paper-bark trees. I appreciate that every tree and bird call is different as I zoom out into another street. Square is the shape of houses and the colours are limited to white, beige and grey. No one would dare paint their abode in green, red, blue or green. I've got green twice. Mind you, when I get to work, I will change out of my green and white lycra and into my slacks and business shirt. We're all captives of the rules of engagement somehow, aren't we? So half an hour along the black and white road, watching every black and white car, I come to the big blue, the Labrador beach with the screech of seagulls and the smell of brine. This is another concrete path for cycles, prams, wheelchairs, walkers, runners and dogs, and two chaps cycling along with a budgie on each of their shoulders. As I cycle closer to surfer's paradise, the colours, body shapes and languages increase in variety. The whole planet sampled in this holiday microcosm. The other preponderance I notice is as the relentless waves play their calming music beyond the smooth sand, our bodies puffed up with exercise and steroids as they stiffly strut their tan skins before us. Pete, Jack and Marjorie might think these people are funny, but they regard themselves with grave seriousness. Amid all this variety of human and other creatures, this path to work blows a refreshing breeze to clear the mind and sweeten the soul. Now, there's not much difference between those two, but it just gives you an idea how tiny, you might notice tiny differences that I've put in, taken out, might ring true or not ring true for you. It's just giving you alternatives to think about. So now it's down to you. 500 words on a scene or an event, and done with as much description as possible. Just have fun, and I'm anxious to see your emailed stories come in. And I wish you all the best.